Hello guys, I hope all of you are doing well. And yes, this is the second part of the lecture on cosmogenic nuclides. And in this part, we would be discussing about an example of an application using in situ produced cosmogenic nuclides. If you remember in the last lecture, we talked about cosmic rays and how cosmogenic nuclides are produced. And basically, what we discussed is that the energetic particles, which we call cosmic rays, when they interact with the atmospheric particles or atmospheric atoms, they generate a lot of secondary particles. And as they come down in the atmosphere, their flux decreases, but still many of these secondary particles, basically they reach the ground surface and they produce the cosmogenic nuclides within the minerals and rocks, which we call in situ produced cosmic ray cosmogenic particles. And just to give you an example, that the 10 beryllium, which we also discussed as an atmospheric produced cosmogenic nuclides in the last lecture, and when we talked about the atmospheric produced 10 beryllium, the target nuclei for that production in the atmosphere was basically oxygen and also nitrogen. And the same 10 beryllium can be produced in situ, that is in the minerals, using the oxygen which is present within the minerals. So this is an example of such kind of reaction. So this is basically a secondary neutron, and that causes a reaction, a spallation reaction, basically, which ejects out, or which causes the 4 proton and 3 neutrons from the oxygen nucleus to go out, resulting in the nucleus of 10 beryllium, which is a radioactive nuclide. And this 10 beryllium can also be produced by the negative muons, which again are secondary particles. If you remember, we had seen a diagram of this kind of reactions in the atmosphere where neutrons and the mesons or the muons are produced. So this secondary negative muon can also cause the oxygen atoms to undergo this kind of spallation reaction, where 3 protons and 3 neutrons are ejected out of the nucleus of subsisting oxygen to produce 10 beryllium. And if you remember, we also talked about 26 aluminum produced in the atmosphere. And when we talked about the 26 aluminum produced in the atmosphere, we talked about the target nuclei as the atoms of the argon in atmosphere. So argon in the atmosphere can act as the target nuclei for production of 26 atmospheric aluminum, and the same type of radioactive 26 aluminum can be produced by spallation reaction on the silicon isotopes, 28 silicon isotope, which is present, which is, on all silicate minerals, these two elements, oxygen and silicon, are the most common elements. So 28 mass number isotope of silicon, which is a common isotope in the minerals, that can be a target nucleus for production of 26 aluminum. So this is one example of such a reaction, where this one proton and 2 neutron goes out of the silicon nucleus to produce atomic number 13 aluminum with mass number 26. And this can also be done using the muons, negative muons, and in that case, because of the charge balance, you can see only 2 neutrons go out of the silicon nucleus to make the 26 aluminum. So idea here is that these are the basically secondary particles which cause the in situ production. And you also know that the flux of such particles, that decreases as as you come down in the atmosphere. So you have more reaction in the higher part of the atmosphere taking place, and then less reactions in the lower part of the atmosphere. And by the time they come to the surface, rocks and minerals, the reactions are, the actual particles available to cause these reactions are not that many. So because of that, the production is also very low. In fact, if you look at the order of production of such cosmogenic in situ nuclides, it would be a few tens to few hundreds of atoms per gram per year. But it so happened that we have good technological advancements now in the form of accelerator mass spectrometer, where we can measure even the low concentration of such nuclides, and that leads us, or that led us to develop a lot of applications which are very interesting. And So the idea here is that this production depends on the flux of cosmic rays and the secondary nuclear particles which actually reaches to the surface. And you know, we have seen in the last lecture that because of this magnetic field of geomagnetic field of the earth, this flux or the flux which are reaching to the surface, this varies with the latitude, because the more concentration of cosmic ray charged particles are towards the high latitude, so you have more production towards the high latitude. And it also varies with the elevation, as I told you just now, that as you go down in the atmosphere, the flux reduces, because most of the particles are already consumed in the reactions with the atmospheric atoms at the higher level. So as the elevation decreases, you have lower production, and at high elevation you have more production of in situ cosmogenic nuclides. The production also depends on the reaction cross section of the target nuclei. So that is one thing which we need to know when we talk about the application of cosmogenic nuclides. It also of course depends on the concentration of target nuclides. So in those minerals where the target nuclides are more, you would have more production of cosmogenic nuclides, and in those minerals where target nuclides are not much, you will not have the cosmogenic nuclides. So basically one can write an equation relating the production of cosmogenic nuclides. So this P here stands for the number of atoms of the product radionuclide, like for example 10 beryllium or 26 aluminium, to the time. Now here the time T is the time of this kind of exposure, or the starting of this procedure. I would say the starting of this procedure, what I mean is the procedure of production of cosmogenic nuclides. So that starts with the exposure of a material to the cosmic rays. And so that is why we will come to the concept of exposure dating in this way. So one can actually find out this time T by measuring the number of cosmogenic nuclides produced in a mineral or in a rock, provided that we know the rate of the production of such cosmogenic nuclides. So this equation basically relates the number of atoms of the cosmogenic nuclide which is produced by cosmic ray interaction in situ with a particular rate r, to the time of such interaction of cosmogenic nuclides with the material. And in fact, if you look at this equation, it can be derived in a similar way as we did in the case of uranium series isotopes, where we know that there is a one long-lived starting radionuclide, and which is producing a series of short-lived daughter radionuclides. So in a similar way, one can assume that you have a long-lived isotope in a sense that because cosmic rays are continuously coming and interacting and producing, and that daughter is again decaying out with the rate of lambda. So this is basically a balance between the production from the cosmic ray interaction and the decay of that produced or the product radionuclide. So in that way, if you look at this equation, you would see that as time t, so this would be a kind of circular equilibrium very large, where term becomes very small. The decay rate and the production rate would be in equilibrium. So the concentration or the product or the activity of cosmogenic nuclide would be actually controlled by the rate of production of that nuclide. So that is called the saturation level, and that is what is shown in this diagram. This is how the concentration or the activity of cosmogenic nuclide builds up with time. So here the time axis is shown in terms of the half-lives. So for any given cosmogenic nuclides, within almost 3 half-lives, the concentration of that nuclide in that particular target material would reach about 90% of the saturation level. That means after that, no matter how much time how much more time you give, you are not going to increase the concentration of that radionuclide in the material. So it is almost saturated with respect to the production of that cosmogenic radionuclide. And so in a way, you can see this is some kind of secular equilibrium, or n1 lambda 1, which could be r is equal to n2 lambda 2, which could be this t lambda. So this is just conceptually it is a similar procedure. So now once we have this equation, then we can use it for dating. by measuring the atoms of cosmogenic nuclide present in the material. So if you can measure it, and as I just mentioned that this can be measured very precisely nowadays because we have very high sensitive mass spectrometer, which is actually called accelerator mass spectrometer. So basically these particle accelerators are used for this mass spectrometry applications, and that help people to measure even very small quantity of cosmogenic nuclides, and that has given rise to so many interesting applications, and some of that we will see shortly. So this type of measurement give us a time which can be interpreted in terms of the time of exposure. So in a way it is we can call it exposure age. And to make it more clear, let me just give you one example. Let us visualize a scenario where a surface was covered by some glacier, and then once glacier retreats because of global warming or because of some climatic changes, if glacier retreats from a particular place, then that material on that surface is now exposed to the cosmic rays, and the material on that surface would start building up the concentration of cosmogenic radionuclide. Now if you collect that sample and measure the concentration, for example, if you find that concentration is around 50% of the saturation level, and then it is this, that surface was exposed to the cosmic ray for more than 1.5 life or so. For example, if you take the 10 beryllium concentration in that material, 10 beryllium's half-life is around 1.5 million years, and so you see that okay, the concentration in the terms of the total saturation, 80% of the total saturation, theoretically whatever you expect the saturation concentration, and you find that the measured concentration of 10 beryllium in that sample is around 70% or so, or 80 more than 75% or so. That turns out to be equal to 2 half-lives, that is 3 million years. That means you can safely say that the surface was exposed to the cosmic ray for last 3 million years. So that is called the exposure age. That means that was the time when the surface got exposed. So this could be applied to many different scenarios. I just gave you one example of glacier retreat, but you can also do the same thing for area where, for example, a surface got suddenly exposed due to a landslide. So a landslide can also expose a new surface to the cosmic rays, and then you can find out the concentration of cosmogenic nuclide, and then you can find out that how much time it would take to build up that concentration, and that would be the time we can call it an exposure age. Yeah, so this looks very simple and elegant technique, but here the key thing is to determine the rate of production, or the with what rate this was being produced. And as I just mentioned that this production rate depends on the flux of cosmic ray particles of certain energy which is required actually to cause that particular nuclear reaction. It also depends upon the concentration of the target nuclides in that material. It also depends on the elevation of that surface of that material. I mean the material which is present at the surface. So at what elevation it was present, because the cosmic ray flux varies with the elevation. You also know that cosmic ray flux varies with the latitude, so it also depends upon. So one has to first estimate this R in order to actually find out the T. And there are many parameters which we have discussed about, which are related to measuring the R or estimating the R. Some of them can be theoretically calculated, or even that can be done in the laboratory experiments. For example, reaction cross section of certain nuclei can be determined in by experimental procedures, and some of them can be measured empirically. For example, in the initial days, people used to send the balloon flights to measure the cosmic ray flux, or the energy spectrum of different types of particles at different elevation by sending certain detectors in balloon at different elevations. So there are many ways of empirically determining some of these parameters, and then one can relate it to the elevation and the latitudinal variation. And this is one such relationship was suggested way back in 1991 by Professor Devendra Lal. So he actually expressed this rate of production as some kind of polynomial equation where this L stands for the geomagnetic latitude and Y stands for the elevation kilometer above sea level. And then for different latitude and different elevation, he worked out all these A, B, C, D parameters, and that are still being used or that can be used to find out the R for a particular sample. And this is one example of such kind of variation of R with latitude and altitude. So here you can see this 10 beryllium concentration is shown as atoms per gram per year. Now here, before we proceed, let me tell you that in most of such studies which use 10 beryllium and 26 aluminum cosmogenic nuclei, they use quartz as a sample, and this quartz has become a very good tool for such cosmogenic nuclei because of simple reason that quartz is basically silicon oxide, SiO2, you know that. And so the target nuclei for both beryllium and aluminum are present there abundantly. So you and then you do not have many other elements which could complicate the production if there are some other possible or potential target nucleides are there for these two cosmogenic nucleides. So those are not there in the quartz, and moreover we know that 10 beryllium and 26 aluminum are also produced in atmosphere. So what happens is, it may so happen in principle that some of the 10 beryllium 26 aluminum which actually were produced in atmosphere is also now attached to the sample which you are using for in situ production. So for example, in your sample there is some amount of 10 beryllium which was produced in situ, but there was also some amount of 10 beryllium which actually was produced in atmosphere, but now it is deposited on that sample and you could not remove that. Then you will obviously you will get the erroneous result or an erroneous interpretation based on assumption that all 10 beryllium measured were in situ produced. So in case of quartz, this is easier to get rid of this contaminating 10 beryllium atmospheric production by simple mild acid treatment and leaching out the adsorbed material, and then you can take out the material from within the quartz which is actually in situ produced 10 beryllium. So quartz in many ways, and quartz is also not so much chemically weathered because many other minerals could chemically weather and change the the amount of cosmogenic nuclei which were originally produced. So it is chemical weathering, at least quartz is resistant enough. So this is a very good tool for studying the cosmogenic nuclides which are in situ produced, particularly for 10 beryllium and 26 aluminum, because for both of these the target elements like silicon and oxygen are abundantly present in enough quantity to give rise to enough production of these two nucleides. So this particular example which I have taken from the earlier studies, basically based on the 1991 study by Professor Devendra Lal. So what is shown here is the production of 10 beryllium and 26 aluminum, that is R, in terms of, you can see, atoms per gram per year. And as I mentioned in my initial slide, that this is, in a way, it is not much. You can see here it varies from 20 atoms per gram per year to almost 60 atoms per gram per year. But still, accumulated over a period of couple of millions of years, this amount would be enough to be measured by the accelerator mass spectrometer, that is AMS. So, but this particular slide is to indicate that this production varies with geomagnetic latitude, which is shown on the x-axis. So you can see from 0° latitude to you are going more towards pole on this right hand side, and you can see as you go more towards the pole for any given elevation. So this is for 1 kilometer elevation. For any given elevation, the production increases, and higher the elevation, production increases further. So from 1 kilometer to 3 kilometer in high latitude, the production can increase from 15 or 18 atoms per gram per year to almost 60 atoms per gram per year. So this is based on this kind of polynomial expression of the rate of production. And similar thing you can see for the 26 aluminum, and here also you can see the production increases very rapidly as you go in high geomagnetic latitude and if you go at high elevation. So this is this kind of estimates are very useful to determine R, and once you determine R, that is the rate of production, then you can use this equation by putting in here the measured amount or atoms of the product nuclide, that is 10 beryllium and 26 aluminum, to estimate the time. And that time can be interpreted according to the sample you have taken. So if you have taken a sample from the glacial terrain, then you can say this is the time when the glacial got retreated. Or if you have taken the sample from some landslide area, then you can say this is the time probably when the last landslide occurred. Now in the case of landslides, one should also take into account the angle of slide. So sometimes if you have a slide which is at at the cliff direction, or in a place which is shielded from the cosmic rays, then you have to correct this equation or correct the rate of production, because shielding would reduce the rate of production. So there are a lot of things which have to be taken into account. So that depends upon the sample, but in principle this equation is a simple equation which can be used, provided that you can estimate R, you know the lambda, and then you can measure the P, you can find out the T. So this T can be interpreted largely in terms of the surface age or the exposure age, or when the surface got exposed to the cosmic rays in a simple way. But here in almost all cases, you as a geologist would know that any surface which gets exposed is also start getting eroded. So basically a surface, as soon as it is exposed to the cosmic rays and you start producing these cosmogenic nucleides, some of these nucleides might be removed by the erosion. So then this equation actually was modified, or modified in such a way to account for this erosion. And for that also Professor Lal and other people, other workers in this field, they have suggested that to account for the erosion, basically what you have to do is you have to modify your decay constant, because the effect of erosion is removal of the cosmogenic nucleides, and cosmogenic nucleides are also removed by decay. I mean, when they decay, they no longer are there. So that means effectively, if you have faster erosion, it means a faster decay. So basically you are increasing your lambda if you have erosion. So that modification in lambda is done by adding this particular term, which includes three parameters. One is the erosion rate. Epsilon is the rate of erosion. It can be expressed in the units of centimeters per year. And rho is the density of the material, which could be gram per centimeter cube. And delta is the absorption mean free path, and that can also be in the units of gram per centimeter square. So if you look at the unit, it is epsilon is centimeter per year. This is gram per centimeter cube. So basically it means gram per centimeter square per year, and here it is gram per centimeter square. So they cancel out and you have a unit per year, which is a unit of lambda. So that way, by including this in the equation, you can actually modify this equation by, instead of writing lambda, you write lambda prime, which accounts for the erosion rate. So your equation now gets modified, and instead of lambda you write lambda prime. So now the advantage here is that not only you can find exposure age, you can actually take into account the erosion rate as well. For example, this is one example shown in this particular slide. Again, I am referring to Professor Lal's 1991 work, where erosion rate is 1 into 10 is to -6 centimeter, 1 millionth of a centimeter per year is the erosion rate. and the density is 2.653 gram per centimeter cube. You know, it is density similar to the density of quartz, and the mean path absorption, mean free path, is 150 gram per centimeter square. That and the rate according to the latitude. As I told you, for different latitude and altitude, the ABC parameters of this equation were worked out. So using those ABCD coefficients or parameters, the rate is determined as 30.54 atoms per gram per year. So if you put all these values here, you would see that, as we see the saturation, now the saturation is, varied according to the lambda prime, and then depending upon how much measurement you have, you can get an exposure age. So here this exposure age is, related to a particular erosion rate. So this is now a important aspect to understand in this kind of applications. For example, if you're talking about that this is the exposure age of a particular surface, you implicitly are saying that this is the exposure age provided that this is the rate of erosion of that surface. So in a way, one can say that, you can calculate the exposure age using this in situ produced cosmic nuclides if you know or assume a particular erosion rate. Or sometimes you can, because there are two unknowns basically, time is also unknown and erosion rate is also unknown. So you can also say that if you know somehow the surface exposure age, then you can also estimate the erosion rate. So this is what is shown in this particular diagram. It is the exposure age versus the rate of erosion. So it tells us that how this exposure age estimates would change when you change the assumption on the or estimates of the erosion rate. So for a very low erosion rate, like for example, this is a logarithmic scale, so it is 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter per year and 10 raised to minus 7 centimeter per year. So you are not changing the exposure age for a given measurement of the cosmogenic radionuclides concentration in that sample. So whatever you measured in the particular sample, if you assume, or if you know the erosion was very slow, like minus 8, 10 is to minus 8 or 10 is to minus 7 centimeter per year, then your exposure age would be almost 2 million years. But as the erosion rate increases, the same production can give you the very high exposure ages. So basically it means that one measurement of the sample can tell you that what could be the minimum. So that means if suppose you have very slow erosion rate, that means your whatever production is there, you are not destroying that production by erosion. So that could be the exposure age, but still some amount of erosion is there. So that means it is a minimum age. That means your surface is definitely older than that age which you estimated for a very slow rate of erosion. On the other hand, the same measurement can be interpreted in terms of a maximum erosion possible for the surface. So you can have what could be the maximum erosion rate for a given production of cosmogenic nuclides, or what could be the minimum exposure age for a given production of the cosmogenic nuclides. So there are certain limitations in this case, as you would have probably understood, that there may not be a unique solution, because basically any surface is prone to erosion, and when you talk about the exposure time, during the same time some of the material might have been eroded, so that also has to be estimated, and the time also. So there are two unknown basically, and so there could not be a unique solution unless you know one of them independently. So if you know that in this area erosion rates are generally of this order, then you can use those erosion rates and find out when the surface would have been exposed, and that can be related to the underlying causes of that exposure of the surface. It could be related to landslide, it could be related to glacial retreat. It could even be related to the new lava flow, because a new lava eruption, a new volcanic eruption can also provide a new surface, because that is a surface eruption. So it creates a new surface. So you can even date the new eruption in a particular area. So whatever is the new surface, you can find out the age of the surface, provided that you know the erosion rate, or you can find out erosion rate if you know when the eruption took place or when the surface actually formed. The some people have to tackle this problem of non-unique answer using one of these cosmic nuclides. Some people have actually started using both together. So if you estimate or if you analyze the same samples for both 10 beryllium and 26 aluminium, then you have two independent ways of estimating the same parameters. So in that way, you can test for the concordancy of the ages or of the rates estimated based on the measurement of 10 beryllium or 26 aluminium, and that gives you better idea or better constraint ages. So this is one application using 10 beryllium and 26 aluminium, which are produced in situ by cosmic rays, or in situ produced cosmogenic nuclides. But this is just an example, and there could be many other applications basically using the similar concept. And the underlying or the key part of this concept is that one should know the rate of production, and then one can find out how much concentration is there. And if you know the rate of the production, then you can relate it to the timing and the processes which actually cause those production. So just to remind you that 10 beryllium and 26 aluminium are not the only cosmogenic nuclides. This was the list of cosmogenic nuclides with a little longer half-lives, which I showed in the first lecture. So you can see that there are many other nuclides which can also be used for similar or some more interesting applications. For example, 36 chlorine also is used for similar type of surface ages or exposure ages. Only thing is that on 36 chlorine, the target nuclides for in situ productions is potassium and calcium. So it depends upon the concentration. So you have to also bring in, or you have to also account for the concentration of potassium in the target sample, or the target material which you are using as sample. Many other interesting isotopes which can be used for similar type of applications. In fact, if you look at the application, people have applied and have been applying this kind of cosmic nuclides for almost all types of applications which can be carried out on the surface samples. So I just try to look for some picture which kind of cover all aspects. So here you have mountains, the water and the surface, and almost all surface procedures can be, in some aspect of those surface procedure can be understood using these cosmic nuclides. I also try to point out these shooting stars which is shown in this picture. And this is just to let you know that large amount of such applications are also carried out on meteorite samples. And meteorites, they actually receive much higher flux of cosmic rays, because they are not shielded by the atmosphere. So in the surface of the earth, by the time the cosmic rays reach there, their flux is already reduced. But the meteorites, so what happens is, generally meteorite becomes a meteorite, or it starts orbiting in a random way, I would say, in solar system, when it is broken away from its parent body. So actually, in that way you can say that meteorite surface gets exposed to the cosmic rays once it is broken from its parent body. And then it will keep on receiving the cosmic rays, and the cosmogenic radionuclides will keep on building up till it falls on the surface of the earth. And then somebody either finds it or see it falling and collect the sample, and then you measure those concentration. So that will provide you the exposure age, and that exposure age in that way can be related to the time when it actually broke from the parent body. So that had its own implications in terms of trajectory of the meteorite and how it was traveling before it came. So there are a lot of interesting applications which people do by doing the exposure age dating. And not only that, in meteorite cases, people even do some dating which they call terrestrial dating, particularly those meteorites which have been exposed so that the cosmogenic nuclides could develop to the saturation limit, and once they fall on the surface of the earth, then those cosmogenic nuclides are decaying. So just by measuring the abundance of cosmic nuclides on such meteorites and assuming that they are decaying from the saturation level, so that becomes the initial activity of the cosmic nuclides, one can find out the terrestrial age. That means for how many uh, for how many years or for what time it was lying on the surface of the earth, which before it was found out by somebody as a meteorite. So there are many interesting applications. In fact, if you read the historical development of this field, you will find that most of these applications using cosmic nuclides were initially carried out much more in the meteorite sample, because the production was much higher there, and measuring of those high produced cosmic nuclides were much easier. And in that case, you would find that even the stable nuclides of krypton and stable nuclides of neon, these were also used for this kind of application of these cosmic nuclides on meteorites. And you would find that they can constrain the exposure ages of meteorites better by clubbing the production of stable nuclide with the radionuclide. So that will cancel out a lot of parameters which could vary. So in that way, you had a better constraint of exposure ages of meteorites. So there are many applications on different aspects of the surface samples, and also the meteorites which are being carried out by cosmogenic nuclides. So I just provided you some conceptual framework of such applications. So the conceptual framework remains same more or less, but for each sample, for each case, one has to take into account other parameters and other factors which could influence the rate of production of such cosmogenic nuclides. And by taking into account, one can actually come to a better constraint on the timings or the rate of processes which one is addressing by using that particular sample. So with that, let me stop here, and that would be end of the topic of cosmogenic nuclides. And I now guess that we have almost covered whatever topics were remaining in the syllabus after our classroom lectures and discussions. And of course, there are some of the topics which we can which I thought we would take more in detail using this period of uh, so-called lockdown. But it depends on you let me know if you would like to have some more detailed discussion on some of those topics which we have already covered. So we will see if we can make some more lectures on some other interesting topics. So okay, so this is the end of this particular lecture, and most of the topics which we wanted to cover in during this time. So let me know if you have any doubt or any other suggestion regarding this. So thank you, and stay safe, and hopefully we will meet soon. Let us see what when that happens.